But again, you know, it is what it is. You know, we you know, strive with the armor we have. And hopefully, you know, this session has illuminated at least a lot of important issues. I mean, I return again to Richie's metaphor about the house, because, you know, we've assembled a house here, and it's eclectic, and it's the pieces don't all fit together, for sure. But now I think you understand why we had this panel at a symposium on innovation, because, you know, there's some degree, you know, there's this famous notion of the innovator's dilemma, right, which is there's the need for incremental, better, faster, cheaper innovation, but if you don't have disruptive, change the game innovation, you're not going to, you know, prevail in the long term. And you got to get the balance right. And I think this is a moment where things have unfrozen enough to the point where fresh ideas can be considered. And so the stewardship, which is part of the subtext of what we've been talking about here, the stewardship of, you know, this incredibly important pillar of society, sounds like it's, in some respects, open for grabs, but it's conversations like this that I think speeds us on our way. So with that, thanks to the panel. Thanks for all of you for being here. That's right.
I've been thrown under the bus so many times. Well, as a white guy working for 40 years trying to promote diversity.
I mean, and see if I could make it wrong. Next slide. There we go. There we go.
Yeah, we're good. That's it. So all you have to do, just because I had to learn this too, is you get it on this big screen, you have to use a keyboard. You can't
No, no, no.
times before clicking. Okay, and then you can just do this. Oh, doesn't matter. So now we're there.
That's good. I mean, you can just send it back.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then let me see what's next.
You know, I studied here 8 years ago, but I'm sure this has changed in the meantime. But we're good. I mean, this is the only thing that Michelle told me to do.
That's all good.
All right.
All right, good. Oh, this is packed.
I love you. I'm like, you're gonna be right there.
Yeah, for real.
And you are not an assistant. You're not assistant material. You are a leader.
No, I'm a personal assistant to you.
Hey, how are you? I think it's in here. Just give me a stylus. We always do.
I was like, okay, I'm Lynn, by the way. I'm a big fan of the Down and
Hi.
one of the lucky people in the arts. That was the art section.
But it was
So,
because
yeah,
it said 135 Prospect.
Oh, yeah, no.
And
That's what's cool.
then I went to Prospect.
Yeah.
How come then?
Yeah, me too. It's over there. I didn't know, like, I didn't know it was cool.
I'm like, I'm at the door.
It's like that black building, right?
And I walked in the front. I was like,
Actually, the first year that they did that. Honestly, so I'll tell you.
have you been to most of it today?
So
I mean, yesterday too.
Sorry, I'm friends with Frances.
Thank you.
Give a chance to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm in my
Coming right back.
But anyway,
There's a startup track. There's a startup track.
Yeah, because I've been seeing some stuff.
I'll leave you here.
I'm running behind you. But I
Listen, at some point when that
Break down our website and my email address since I don't have
Hello, hello. If we can have the next panelists please come close to the center of the room. We want to get started with the next session, so please help us out.
So where are you traveling? Are you on the 8:30 flight? From Boston? Oh, from Boston. I'm flying from Hartford, actually. There's a direct from Hartford to LA. It never gets, you're going to get older. It's lost, I know, especially at the end of the day.
Because it's not starting.
I've got board meeting with JP Morgan and then
I like this setup better. Be excited. Here for you. I got this. I was at this point. Yeah. Is it an energy thing? Is it a? I can. Hi, how are you?
I'm coming.
I can't do it today. I'm like, I don't have the energy.
I actually think it's going to set you all up for night.
to get on the plane right after this. Yeah, totally. Totally happy to. Oh, I thought, when is it? I'll be out of town.
Sunday the 20th, Saturday.
Okay, great. I'll be here. I'll be here. Okay, yeah.
Count me in. Okay, good. All right, well, I'm going to be here for like 15-ish, and then I have to leave. That's really exciting. I'm not so proud. I know. She's turned into like a woman. She's a woman. How old is she? Oh my God. Can't make it up. No. I know. Hormones. Hi, how are you? I guess y'all are sharing mics.
You're literally.
Alrighty, hello everyone. We are going to get started. So if you can get your seats, if you are staying for this panel, please have a seat. If you are not staying for this panel, now would be a good time to leave. My name is Adriane Jefferson. I'm the Director of Cultural Affairs for the City of New Haven. And thank y'all. It's so good to see so many of you, familiar faces, and those who I do not know. By the end of this, we will be friends. Maybe friends. But no, we're really glad to be here today. Today we are talking about what does equity mean for the arts. We are looking at this through a lens of cultural equity, the investment into Black and brown people and other marginalized groups such as LGBTQ, such as young people, the aging community. How do we be more inclusive of people who do not have a voice, right? That's what we're centered on today. A lot of times people believe that you cannot both center equity and make economic revenue. And so today we're here to talk about the sustainability and the revenue that actually is tied when you have a diverse audience pool. Okay, so we're here to bust some myths. You have an amazing panel here in front of you. I was just so blown away when looking through the work that they all do and the way that they have been in spaces, disrupting these spaces and making room for equity in spaces that often don't have room for equity or feel like they don't. So yeah, that's what we're talking about today. I want to shout out the people in the room who have helped to create the cultural equity plan for the city of New Haven. We actually have the first cultural equity plan in the state of Connecticut where we are centering marginalized voices, where we are talking about the redistribution of funding. We are, and I know y'all just had the return on investment panel, we are a multi-billion-dollar creative economy. In the state of Connecticut, we are close to being a billion-dollar industry, okay? And so what's happening is our Black and brown communities are not seeing that money. In this, thank you. They're taking care of me, my friends. But yeah, a lot of Black and brown people are not seeing that money, right? If you look into the cultural equity plan, you will see that if we can redistribute the funds into the Black and brown community, then the creative economy actually has a place at the table to help close the racial wealth gap, right? It is that serious. Grant makers in the arts released a study probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And what they showed was that out of 100% allocation, 1% of dollars is actually going back into the Black and brown community for funding. Okay, so these are real numbers. We're not making it up. We know the money's there, so it's talking about redistribution. So nobody better to talk about that today than our amazing panel. So what I'm going to do is ask them to go through and quickly introduce themselves, and then we're going to jump into some questions, some specific questions that I have for each of them, and hopefully some more general questions. Should be a really good conversation, and I'm hoping to bring you all into the conversation as well. So if that sounds good, let's start with Ward. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Great. Hello, everyone. My name is Ward Wolff. I'm the director at the nonprofit organization Upstart CoLab. We were founded in 2016. We're a sponsored project of Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors. And at its core, we believe that creative people solve problems. So what we are doing as an organization is connecting the $8.4 trillion that's in sustainable, responsible impact investing with the $877 billion U.S. creative economy. We think that the creative economy hasn't been served really within the growing world of impact investing. Investors can't target the way you might be able to target climate or public health or education. And we really believe strongly in the potential of the creative economy to deliver good returns and meaningful, deep impact in communities, social justice, economic opportunity, community development, and vibrant communities. We have been working really closely with a coalition that we've built of foundations, donor advised funds, family offices, and endowed cultural institutions who have been really working to pioneer the field of impact investing in the creative economy. And something I'd love to talk a little bit about later is our new investment strategy that we've now launched, which is going to be our own portfolio of companies and funds driving impact in the creative economy. Thank you.
Let's give it up for Ward. The artist.
Hi, everyone. Is this on?
Yeah, sorry. As long as that works, we have to share the mic. We're all going to share the mic. It's okay. Can y'all hear me? Yes. Then I don't need a mic.
Okay. Okay, now, there we go. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm artist Gardner Gleser, founder and owner of Black Ivy Collective, a consulting firm where I work with folks in philanthropy, particularly family philanthropy. And a lot of my work is centered on not even a redistribution of dollars, but actually a distribution, because we actually didn't get the shit before. So we're working on distributing and I'm sorry, I already cussed. Dang, I was going to try to do good today. I just realized that. Okay.
So you can't handle that. Now would be your time.
Hey, I didn't make it long. But yes, like I was saying, so a distribution and a return of the resources. Because this country, we don't get here with this amount of wealth without the attempted genocide of indigenous folks and free labor on the backs of black bodies. We don't get here without it. So I am from Seattle. I like long walks on the beach. No, I don't. I hate walking. I live in Detroit, and actually, I'm a Yale alum. I graduated in 2008, and I transferred here from community college in Seattle. So came out here with my 3 kids and graduated when I was 32. So that's my kind of weird connection to this weird place. And I'm going to stop there because we have lots more to talk about.
Jacob?
Is this working? Yeah, okay, excellent. Hi, everyone. My name is Jacob Padron. I use he, him pronouns. Really happy to be here. I actually want to start with just an affirmation. I think it's so amazing that we are pairing the arts in dialogue with science and technology. And so, because, artists are the revolutionaries, as one of our board members says. And so the fact that we get to have this conversation, I think, is really powerful and a testament to the work that we have to do in this world. I hail from California. I'm from Gilroy, which is just south of Silicon Valley. It's the garlic capital of the world, and I'm allergic to garlic, which is the great irony of my life. I like to share that little tidbit. But when I'm on panels like this, I'm trying to be better about bringing that history into these spaces, because my family were migrant workers. And so I come to this conversation with my family and my ancestors who made a lot of sacrifices so that way I could be in rooms like this and be a part of conversations like this. I am a graduate of Yale School of Drama. I graduated in 2008. I'm now on the faculty. And I have the honor of being the artistic director of Long Wharf Theater right here in New Haven, Connecticut. Long Wharf, thank you. Long Wharf is a regional theater. We were started in 1965. And over the course of about 60 years, we have built a really powerful body of work. We've done classic plays, new plays, musicals. A lot of the work that's been incubated right here in our city has gone on to have life in communities all across the country, including Broadway and New York. I'm also the founder and co-artistic director of an initiative that is called the Sol Project, the Sun Project. And the idea there is to amplify the voices of Latinx playwrights in New York City and across the United States. I come to this work with a lot of hope, and that hope is about the American theater being a place that can hold all of our stories. But we, as a community, have to be the architects of fulfilling that promise. And so the Soul Project is trying to get us closer to that promise of the American theater. So just really grateful to be a part of this conversation around cultural equity. Thank you.
James.
Me, James, yeah. Hi. I'm a proud parent of a Yale 26, and Francis, you deserve a lot of kudos for your courage. I'm just been really impressed. Yeah, my relationship, it's about equity, so I'll sort of introduce myself that way. I'm a second-gen American. Parents were both caregivers. One's a pediatrician, one's a nurse. They're both passed away, but it's important. What's in my genes. In my 20s, I explored equity. I taught high school. I think I made 12 grand a year. They fed me, but I made 12 grand a year. And I went to Harvard Law School to be a public defender. And then in my 30s, I realized you need money, and money was important too. So believe it or not, I was in a lot of tall buildings in Boston and New York managing billions of dollars of money. Both growth and distressed. I owned a lot of brands where people and soul and behavior connect, like Equinox Fitness Clubs, Bass Pro. It's the alchemy of brands that you combine with math. That's sort of how my brain works. It's a little nutty. And then in my 40s, my life took a real twist. These are all layers. So I spent most of my 40s working and collaborating with tens of thousands, if not millions, of Black women across the country as the CEO of a very important brand for Black women, and you're going to ask me that question later. So my whole 40s was that, and I sort of left the world in my 20s and 30s. And we built a different ecosystem, I think quite successfully. And today, what Red Helicopter is, it is a place. It's a place where, like I teach at MIT, and I also chair entrepreneurship at Howard. And I'm building a world where that makes sense. And it makes sense to me. It's a world where I'm on the board at JP Morgan Chase Advancing Black Pathways, and I'm an Ashoka Fellow. I am a suppressed musician. I've realized I've always been that. It was hard for me to be that, if you look at me. And I'm realizing that I am. And so a lot of my life these days are in creatives. I'm working with Judith Kerr's team, who did Viola Davis's work on a book, a movie. I'm hoping a musical with Yale. And it's manifesting sort of music math. That's sort of what I do.
All right, yes, give it up for our panel. So I love how y'all just jumped right in. They just got to the nitty gritty. Like, it was no easing in. It was just like 100% real. The first question is actually going to be towards Ward. So if you can please give Ward the mic. So, Ward, you have launched an inclusive creative economy strategy with an $100 million portfolio of funds that will focus on the creative industries, such as fashion and film and TV, immersive visual arts experiences, beauty, and health. The funding is going to be geared towards Black, Indigenous people of color and women entrepreneurs, with the ultimate goal being to deliver impact that is human-centered, cultivated jobs, cultivating vibrant communities and sustainability. And this is the first impact investment strategy for the creative economy in the United States. I'm hoping you could speak today about the why behind this initiative. Why did you find that this was necessary? What prompted you all to launch this strategy? And what were the gaps you were identifying in capital investment in the arts when it came to historically marginalized communities?
Great. Well, thank you so much for that question. And yeah, it's very exciting. You know, we're in the process of pulling together this portfolio. We're aiming for our first close of $20 million imminently, so we can call capital from our anchor investors and begin deploying. And happy to talk about sort of the nuts and bolts behind that offline or after this. But I think looking at the sort of rationale or the case behind this initiative, I think there's sort of three main areas. Number one, recognizing an unmet need. The second is clearly a good case for both positive financial and social outcomes. And the third is really being able to serve as a model that hopefully others will scale and replicate. So, you know, the first bit about an unmet need, you know, we're really just trying to build bridges between entities that exist and maybe haven't really been in conversation with each other. We look at international examples of being able to invest for impact in the creative industries in, you know, Europe and Latin America and Africa. There are funds that are 100% focused on fashion, on supporting artisans as a pathway to wealth building. And there's not, you know, a way to be able to do that really at scale that's readily available to U.S. investors. We also think there's the capital supply and the capital demand are both there. So on the capital supply, you know, there's a study that was released by Deloitte a couple of years ago around art and finance that said about 21% of wealth managers would find a vehicle targeting a social impact investment vehicle targeting creative industries as relevant to their clients, but it doesn't exist. So that's 21%. So they have unmet demand from their clients. And then on the capital demand side is, you know, we've built a pipeline of more than 300 opportunities seeking about $2 billion in capital. This is a pipeline that we've built through our advisory work and field building work over the last 6 or 7 years. The vast majority of those opportunities are led by women and people of color. There's a high degree of overlap that we've seen between, you know, who is starting and leading businesses in creative industries. And that's sort of strategy. And so, you know, that's the sort of unmet need that we're looking at. The second is around sort of the case that can be made. We think there's really a case for strong financial outcomes. We're, you know, targeting around 13 to 18% IRR as part of this portfolio. And our impact thesis is all around, as you said, people-focused, access to capital, quality jobs, vibrant communities, and sustainable creative lives. And lastly, I'll just mention, you know, I said we wanted to serve as a model. You know, we're a nonprofit. We're going to remain a nonprofit. We're doing this portfolio in partnership with an organization, Impact Assets, which is a big platform for donor-advised funds for impact investing. They have been around since 2010. They have about, you know, $3 billion in assets under management from about 1,900 donor-advised funds, and so they're our implementation partner for this strategy. But as part of our role as a nonprofit leading this initiative is we want to be very generous with what we're learning and what we're building. So we're going to be sharing our due diligence on both companies and funds. We're going to be generating leads for fund managers and for entrepreneurs. We want to unlock this growing pool of values-aligned or mission-driven capital for diverse entrepreneurs all around the country, and just really sort of hope that someone with, you know, as we say, like more money and better looking and, you know, everything else can go and make it a big scalable thing. But we are able to sort of take the risk to be the first ones to go out there and prove that it can be done. And so that's a bit of the why behind it.
Can you talk just a little bit more about the models that you've seen globally that you guys are kind of looking to for inspiration, what some of those outputs and outcomes were, any just further information you can point to?
Sure. So, I mean, if you look at, for instance, There's HIVA Fund based in Nairobi. It's 100% creative industries in their portfolio, and it's interesting because at least in our experience here in the United States, it's I think people have been looking at creative industries a lot of times as the realm of philanthropy and government, and haven't really looked at it through the investment case. But in the case of the HIVA Fund, it's they've in many ways sort of leapfrogged us in the sense that they've made the case that creative industries are really driving wealth building opportunities and are really pathways to economic development in a way that we haven't really recognized before.
Wonderful, thank you. C Artist, you are next. I'm so inspired by the work that you are doing with Black Ivy Collective. On your website, you talked about it being born out of a desire to celebrate and pass the mic to communities of color, which I love. On your website, you mentioned doing this for yourself, you mentioned doing this for your family and lineage, and you said, but most importantly, doing this for change in community. You are creating authentic experiences, creating spaces of belonging, and you are also uprooting the philanthropy system and kind of just taking it and just completely disrupting it. And we know that philanthropy is often very problematic, right? Often very inequitable. So all of the work you are doing is really committed to that. So I was hoping that you could elaborate on what passing the mic to communities of color actually looks like, particularly through the lens of establishing economic power and building generational wealth. I'm also hoping you can highlight some of the problems you have seen while working in philanthropy, which I'm sure there is many, and the solutions you have created to just disrupt that.
Easy question.
Gave you a layered question, but I know you got it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that question. I think I'll just start in, when I went into philanthropy, I had been a volunteer on a couple of different grant committees, and people were making decisions that actually had no connection to the communities. It wasn't their money, and they're making decisions about who to give the money to, and it was really based on nothingness. It was, I was in a committee and we were making decisions about homeless youth, and they were like, we think they would really love some perfume, and we have some people, we're gonna give them rocks to paint. And I was like, nah, that's not that. I was like, raise your hand if you were homeless as a youth. Oh, just me? Okay, let me tell you what I really needed was a piece of luggage so I didn't have to carry my things on the bus in a garbage bag. How about we actually ask the young people what they want and what they need? And it continued to happen over and over. And I was like, that's it. I was working in nonprofit, and I said, I gotta go work in philanthropy because I gotta see what the hell is going on. And I would always get the interview, but not get the job. Because I would always ask questions. I'm the 4-year-old kid that's like, why? Why do you have an LOI? Why do you need a site visit? Why do you, and they were like, yeah, I never got called back. And then, one place called me back, and finally, and I was like, oh, I'm in here. I'm so excited because the gatekeepers were strong in this. So I'm about to be in the room with the smartest and the best. And I get there and I was like, it's y'all? Y'all not even the smart people. Where's this? I'm thinking you're trying to keep me out because it's really hard to get in here. And it's mediocre folks, or less than in some cases. And so when I came in there, I was just, people, the gaslighting of philanthropy of this is a real thing, this is a sector, you have to have an application, it needs to be this many words, we need a report. And I was like, do we though? I don't think so. So then I would always share the story of my grandmother that would send all of the grandkids a birthday card. I don't know how she tracked all of this. She had a lot of grandkids. And she would send them a birthday card with either $5 or a Barnes & Noble gift card for $5. And every year it would come. My kids were on it. My youngest was like, where's my card? And then my youngest was the one that was like, Gigi, I mean, thank you for sending the cards, but how about, I don't want the Barnes & Noble gift card. Can I just have the $5? Cause I want to buy candy and whatever. And And Gigi was like, oh, cool, because I'm tired of picking up the gift cards. So I'm like, so my grandmother was a funder. She listened to her community, and she changed her restricted multi-year funding to unrestricted. So I was like, shit's not that hard. Like, we can do this. So it's kind of more and more like we talk about increased spend in philanthropy. And I've been in meetings where folks are like, we have to figure out the strategy for increasing spend. I'm like, I think you just spend more money. I think you just move more money. That's the solution. I don't think it's anything we got to go do math on. The math people can do it later, but let's decide how much more we want to spend. So I really wanted to move into a place where we hire folks that are directly impacted, hiring organizers to work in philanthropy, to partner with folks in community, because the people that hold the power and that are making decisions don't come from the communities that they say they want to serve. So we actually need to move past the mic to the folks in community, allow them a seat at the table. And I'm not talking about these participatory grant-making committees that people have. Like, oh, we know we're a $100 million foundation, but we have this community committee and y'all can make decisions about this $15,000. No, and I don't want no more community advisory boards. Like, why can't I be on the board at the grown-up table where I get to look at your budget and actually talk about what you're doing? And I think the other thing I realized in philanthropy is, philanthropy has no natural predators. Okay? They don't report to anybody. So all these things about the rules, we can't do that, you can do whatever the hell you want. Because who's checking for you? The IRS is checking, maybe. You might get audited, spend your low 5%, but y'all barely spending that. So it's just like, what are we doing? Like, you can, so then when I was in philanthropy and I love art, and I'm trying to explain to the funder, art is life. Particularly for communities of color, we need art. Fund the art. And they're like, it's an after school art. I'm like, art is life. I'm like, when art is activism. And Frances said it yesterday when she said art influences culture and culture influences policy. That is so real. So, it's like, when have you ever seen any movement in this country or any country where there wasn't a song that went with the movement, where We Shall Overcome was in the civil rights movement, where during the labor movement, the signs, I am a man, right? Or the signs, the posters that were made by artists for the Women's March of 2017 with the Muslim woman, the Latina, the indigenous woman, and the Black woman. Like, art is activism, art is movement, art is life, and we need to fund it. And funders can actually do that. So foundations can do it. This whole piece around, you have to be a 501c3, that was actually how I met Frances. We were at the Impact Summit a couple months ago here at Yale, and there was a woman talking about a project, and she said, well, I'm starting a foundation, and I had a question during the Q&A, and I was like, do you want a 501? Yeah, she was starting a 501c3. I said, but do you want a 501c3? And she's like, well, yeah, because I can't get access to dollars. And I'm like, no. We have to change the system. The system is what is broken because there's too many grassroots people out here doing work to serve their people and community, out here taking the time to start 501c3s because the system has told them that's what they need to do to get access to money that's already theirs. So it's like, start a 501c3 if that's the business model that you need to do your work. But if not, y'all get to make money too, because we all got to eat, and we all get to take naps, and we get to rest, and we get to live liberated lives. So it's this whole piece around, we have to do things the way that it's always been done. No, we don't. And the deeper we look, the shit is made up. Y'all don't really even have, you're not even reading the reports. And why is it your money? So then the other quick story I'll share is, so before, I've had a really weird professional background, but I used to build trucks at Kenworth Trucking Company. So I am a certified forklift operator and a fiberglass specialist. And little side funny note, I worked next to Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer. We had coffee, and I didn't know he was killing people after work. But so I'm building these trucks, 32 trucks a day, on second shift. And my father worked for the same trucking company for 30 years. I'm the first person in my family to graduate from college. He was in the military, then came out and worked at Kenworth, and then was laid off after 30 years as, you know, a 57-year-old black man without a degree. He's like, what am I going to do? He went to try to drive trucks. He's like, that's too hard. I don't want to do all that. So then he did, and he couldn't get his retirement because he was too young. So it was kind of all these things, and won't he do it? So I ended up at the foundation where their wealth is Kenworth Trucking. PACCAR Trucking Company is, I'm like, so when we have conversations around whose money is this, like your company was founded in like, I don't know, 1890 or 1900. We're on like the 6th generation of people that are living off of these dollars. And I'm like, how many trucks have you sanded? Like, I literally, like, this is actually my money. Like, I was building these trucks for y'all. Y'all didn't lay my daddy off. You know? I'm like, this is actually mine. So even when we think about wealth creation and wealth holders, it's not, I think so often we think about it in the abstract. And this is not an abstract thing. I'm only 47, and I know the people that are still living off of the dividends of the money that when I was sanding trucks in 1994. So it's even like that. We need to start holding people accountable. We just need people to give money and, again, distribute the money, return the resources. Philanthropy, the literal translation is love of humankind. So it literally is like, what the hell do we have to do to just get people to care about another person outside of themselves? And then that's the way that the shifts will happen. If I'm in pain, then you need to be in pain too, but not like if we're talking about diversity and all the other things. And I'm excited that my son is 21, gets to be a 21-year-old black man, and he has lived this long, but it doesn't matter to other folks because y'all don't have that concern. It needs to be your concern. But my favorite thing is I just need y'all to like give money. Give money to artists, because also the other thing too, I think we're robbing ourselves of the artistic expression that lives in people's bodies and artists' bodies to create when they have to spend time doing jobs that they do not need to be doing, but literally because they need to eat. So they're going to take a job here and a job here and then create their art on the side. They need to be creating art full time, and people need to fund it in the way that people used to fund like the Harlem Renaissance. There were benefactors that was literally, here's your money, go write your poetry, and I'm getting out of the way. Like, you don't need to know what's happening, what people are doing, but we need to just give money directly to artists and get rid of all of this, whatever we think philanthropy is and the reports, and like, you need to know what people are doing. You don't need to know you don't need to know anything. You just need to move the money. Like, it's not your business. Because you want to consume art, but you don't want to actually pour into the people that are creating the art, and our bodies are tired.
Yeah, we carry a lot of trauma in our bodies. I think that that's not often acknowledged. I think it's not often acknowledged how difficult it is when you are a Black woman or a marginalized person entering into these spaces, the tokenism that comes with it, all of the different things that we carry on a daily basis. Thank you for your answers. I appreciate that answer. And actually, that's a great segue to Jacob, who is the artistic director of the Longworth Theater, but also an anti-racist organizer who has been doing this for many years in both California and in New York. And we are just so fortunate to have you, Jacob, in New Haven, those who are in the arts community in New Haven working with us. Your approach, particularly working with the Longworth Theater, which is a legacy-based, very white institution, whose audience is predominantly white and older. You have brought new life into this organization by your focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, belonging. You have done it against the grain when others may not have wanted you to do that, when others who have pushed back on you, very difficult. And I know it's been harmful and hurtful to you, but nevertheless, you are resilient and you're moving forward. Recently, the Longworth Theater has left your longtime home to become a mobile theater. It's kind of what I say, right? It is a new model that you've kind of rolled out to bring access to the front doors of people who usually do not have access to theater. So when I was thinking about the work that you do, I was thinking about how a lot of times people feel like you cannot both be culturally equitable, intentional about developing new audiences the way that you have, and also economically sustainable at the same time. So I was hoping that you can bust the myth today and speak to cultural equity as a tool that increases foot traffic, equitable cultural tourism, and what that means, what that looks like, economic impact, and sustainability.
I'm like, whew, that's a question. I think I'm also still like just savoring your story about your grandmother understanding philanthropy and flipping it on its head, which is just so delicious. Thank you so much for that question, Adriane. I firmly believe that when you center cultural equity, when you center people of color, when you center anti-racism and inclusion, it is a pathway and a tool to possibility. And as I look out, in this audience, I think it's important to acknowledge that I am surrounded by people that I've learned from. I'm here with Alex Meda, who we were mentored by the same woman, Diane Rodriguez, and this was her life's work. I look at the back and I see my friend Kevin Bitterman, who has centered this work in his life. Nico is here, I think, who also, teaches me so much about how to live this work and how to center this work in my life and at Long Wharf Theater. Shelley, who's just continuing to bust down the doors and dismantle the myths at the International Festival of Arts and Ideas. But I think in order to really center cultural equity and to have the kind of possibilities that you're articulating, increase foot traffic, a pathway to sustainability, new audiences, you first, I think, have to start with laying the foundation. And I think that's the step that I think we often miss in our corporations, in our organizations, and in our investments. And what I mean by that is it's about cultural transformation. When I started at Long Wharf Theater, I said very early on when I was a candidate for the job with the search committee, I said, this is the work that we have to center. These are the values that are going to animate our work moving forward. And we have to actually shift our culture within the organization. That when we talk about anti-racism, when we talk about cultural equity, it's not just about what you put on the stage. It's about who makes up the staff. It's about who's in the boardroom. It's about how you're showing up in community. It's about building a shared analysis. One of the things that we did from the beginning was we did some trainings. And I think that a lot of organizations do the wanting to check off the box of we're going to do a one day and we're going to talk about sort of cultural equity. We're going to talk about anti-racism. We're going to talk about EDI, and we're good. We're good. But that's actually not the pathway to real cultural transformation. It actually has to be an ongoing commitment, an ongoing dialogue. One of the things that I say, I actually said this to a reporter in the New York Times when they did a kind of profile about Long Wharf Theater's new model, as I said, show me your budget and I'll show you your values. So you actually need to allocate real resources to this work. And so it's ongoing in many ways. It really, really is. And we're just getting started. And thank you for naming it. Yes, so the idea is that rather than being tied to one space, which we had for 60 years, it's about activating different spaces around our city and around our region to tell stories and bring communities together. If we say that we want to be a theater company that belongs to the people, you have to go to the people. And so that's what we're trying to manifest. But y'all, the resistance to change, the resistance to that idea, the resistance to being a theater company that can belong to everyone, has been really, really hard, really painful. And so when we get to that, I have more to say on that, but I want to let my other panelists speak. So thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. James. So our final specific question is for you. So through your work at Red Helicopter, I just love, first of all, I have to say, this panel is just so dynamic. Seriously, I had a chance to research the work they're doing. And yes, please give them a round of applause. It really is incredible. I love how at Red Helicopter, you are focusing on the shift in perspective to how people do business. And you feel like it starts mentally in the mind. Your website mentions how you are part of saving the Ashley Stewart brand, which is the world's largest Black plus-size clothing line. The work you did with this brand was rooted in joy and trust and authenticity and storytelling. You name that specifically on your website, which I thought was courageous and bold and very telling. Something else that struck me about your work is you say, instead of money, what if we also valued goodwill? And you speak to goodwill as a business asset, right? That we often miss. That does have financial gain when you operationalize it. I thought that was very powerful. And you talk about, which is so funny because I've never seen these two things like married in the same sentence, but you say your modeled marries capitalism and ethics, which I didn't know those two things went together. But you clearly have a model for this. There are people, I feel, in our society who think that these two things, again, can just never go together. And so I was hoping you can speak today about the power of diverse, authentic, and ethical ecosystems, and what that actually looks like. What does that really mean? And how do we mobilize it? How does it impact the bottom line in positive ways that show up in our society?
Yeah, sure. I think I'm going to take a risk. It's a creative crew. If I explain it this way with my CalPERS and private equity friends, I get this. I'm going to really tell you how and what I did and we did and how it manifested. So this was 10 years ago. This was a long time ago. There was this business called Ashley Stewart. On the surface, it sells clothes to a certain segment of Black women in this country. It's actually a fairly large business, and people sort of dismissed it. You can imagine how the business was treated as a whole, given how the women are treated. Does that make sense? So it's 20 years of losing money, no Wi-Fi, in like this shitty distribution center in Secaucus. And my dad was dying. This woman reminded me of my mother. So just wears 20 hats, doesn't ask for credit, doesn't get any credit, just does it. And so all of these things converge. And I hate to say it, but some of the words in finance and capital markets, if you think you're worried about misogyny or racism, obviously there is. And so I didn't like it. So I said something, and they said, "What are you going to do about it?" And so I said, "I'm resigning, and I will be interim CEO of the company." It was supposed to be 6 months. It ended up being 7 years. So in 6 months, I showed up, and this is what happens sometimes when you talk about creativity and new paradigms. I was naked. I wasn't qualified. I'm not Black. I'm not a woman. It was just one of these things where I'm sitting there, and I have the whole system's about to come down on this company. I'm part of that. I know what's coming. And so you're sitting there like this, and I was alone. And it was really, it was very lonely. And I was scared. I was getting made fun of by a lot of people and saying, "What are you doing? You're ruining your career." And anyway, so the only people who didn't laugh at me were really the Black women in the stores. So I left the corporate, I worked the stores for 6 months, hanging jewelry. I learned what peplum was in Maryland. I learned everything. And it just reminded me of the way that I met their children. The way that she was with her children was how my mom was with me. And so after 6 months, here's the sad news. I literally composed it was a musical. I wrote a musical. So math is music. Music is math. I literally wrote a inverted inside-out musical that was org theory. Does that make sense? Like, instead of org boxes, I let the water flow. And so I hired filmmakers. I ended up producing huge shows with Rhee and Vivian Chu and Lonnie Love and Whoopi Goldberg to make it manifest to the world. But for the first 2 years, I had to make it manifest to the women that I was working with. And so we built the majority-minority world. I said that in this world, you are not other, you are the majority. And so to do this, I had to unwind everything I learned in, like accounting became just like, you know the Matrix when he just does this? I took accounting and said, this is false, it's not math. And so a lot of the inspiration was music, physics, and like neuro. Real science, to really let her free. And I went out and begged for money, and like, I want you to know the entire world said no. I couldn't raise a penny. And I'm pretty wired, like in the money world, I couldn't get a dollar. And so I had a choice to make, and so I called up my friends, and it was like, It's a Wonderful Life. I said, I need money. And so I showed up at the bankruptcy court with $18 million. I said, you're not liquidating this fucking company. It's not going down. So I stayed for 7 years, and we did some, I think people appreciate it now what we did. They didn't understand what we were doing. But just to show you some returns, I'll define it in so many different ways. We made 165% IRR per annum for 7 years. Okay, so if you invested with us, you made a shit ton of money. 2, I partnered with Stacey Abrams to register women to vote in 2018. And she asked me, she's like, can you do this? And I said, how can I not? Of course we have to do this because it's about agency. Number 3, like we busted every actuarial table in insurance, workers' comp, health care. We centered her well-being. Was the entire business model was everything we did was her as a person. And so all of these things happened. So, I think that the biggest, for me, the mark of success was after my mother died after 7 years. I needed a break, so I needed to just take some time. But when Dr. Frederick called me to ask me to chair entrepreneurship at Howard, I cried. I mean, I just was, that to me was the biggest success, that for them to invite me to do this. And so I'm in my third year of my 3-year commitment, and the way I'm teaching down at Howard and at MIT, I'm doing a lot of things backwards. It's finance, accounting, neuro, it's all backwards. And it makes sense to me that we designed a system. Of course there was a system redesign to allow her to be herself. And I think last comment, I think musically, I think what we did really well, I think what I did really well, I really heard her song well. Like, does that make, like, the timbre, like, and so people used to say, she sounds different. And I says, because she feels like she can be. And so we ended up having 40% tech e-com driven white women buying from this company. And so, because I used to say, she has lots of friends. And so we wired the money where we were importing capital from non-black neighborhoods. And I tracked that capital separately to fund long-term investments in black neighborhoods. Does that make sense? So there was there were no acronyms. It was literally woven into every mathematical equation was woven in it. It had to be this way. And so that was what I did for 7-something years. I think these days people now more understand what it is, and so that's why some of the things it's starting to. So I'm trying to teach like young people, but also like CEOs of leading companies, and saying, you can do it, because I won't let you tell me it's not possible, because we did it. So if you don't want to do it, don't do it. But if you want to do it, I'll teach you.
So you also spoke to your relationship with her as a very unlikely relationship. And I thought that was interesting. I just was wondering if you could talk about why you felt like that was unlikely.
Oh, I mean, it's beautiful. I just, for me, like we over-measure things. And this is from a quant guy. We over-measure things. I really give space in my life for alchemy. It's beautiful. Like, and there's a big article in the Boston Globe about 4 years ago, and then Charisse Jones, who's a good friend of mine, she did the Misty Copeland bio with Misty, and they pulled me aside, a lot of black women leaders like Soledad, and they said, James, we're going to give you the biggest compliment we can give somebody. I said, but you have to sit down, because you might fall. And I'm like, okay. And they said, you have the heart of a black woman. Like, do you know what that means? And after many years, I said, yeah, my mother had that heart too. You mean the person who keeps giving and keeps giving, and you hope and you create a collective good, but usually it's not reciprocated and you get disappointed, but you keep doing it anyway because you hope your kids will benefit from it, but it's sad.